There was a time, not long ago, when the skyline of Ouagadougou, the heart of Burkina Faso, was shadowed not by buildings, not by trees, not even by clouds, but by waste, mountains of it. Plastic bags fluttered like lost souls in the wind. Rusted cans and broken electronics buried the earth beneath their weight. In neighborhoods where children should have been playing football, they were tiptoeing around used syringes and breathing the stink of burning garbage. The mountain of waste wasn't just made of trash. It was made of neglect, corruption, and the long, painful echoes of a world that never believed Africa deserved better. Pause. Gentle, sorrowful tone. Old Mama Binta remembered when her neighborhood was green, when mango trees lined the dusty streets and kids sold peanuts in paper cones. But now, the trees had died, choked by smoke. The air smelled like melted plastic and despair. Every morning, Binta's grandson, Issoufou, just 9 years old, tied a scarf around his face and made his way to the city dump with a stick and a torn sack. Not for adventure, not for fun, but to scavenge. A phone battery, a piece of copper wire, bent spoon, trash, was life. And in that mountain of waste, a generation was getting buried. Narrator tone shifts. Growing intensity. Burkina Faso was drowning. Not in water, but in the consequences of a global system that ships second-hand electronics, rejected clothing, and expired plastics from the West, straight to African soil. They called it donations, but the people living near the dump knew better. It was dumping pure and simple. Every month, more came. More TVs that didn't work. More laptops beyond repair. More plastics that couldn't be recycled with the tools they had. And in the silence of neglect, the mountain grew. Cut to ambient city sound. Kids coughing. Distant fires crackling. Doctors in Ouagadougou noticed something chilling. More cases of asthma in toddlers. More lung disease in the elderly. Mothers miscarrying without explanation. And when the rains came, the water carried toxins from the dumps into the wells, poisoning the last hope of clean water for entire neighborhoods. But worse than the sickness was the silence. No international outcry, no breaking news, no headline in the Western press. Just another African problem, ignored. Narrator quiet and heavy tone, but even in the darkest alleys of the human experience, hope stirs, and sometimes, it doesn't come with a bang. It comes with a footstep, a visit, a leader who walks not in golden palaces, but through the fumes and fire of his people's pain. Cue soft, hopeful music begins to rise. It was on a gray morning in 2023, when a convoy of black vehicles halted near Sector 25, the neighborhood closest to the largest dump site in Ouagadougou. But the man who stepped out wasn't wearing a mask. No air filters, no gloves. Just a pair of worn boots, and eyes that refused to look away. Once a city choked by fumes, Ouagadougou had become an unlikely beacon. The same children who once sorted broken phones now wore gloves, operated sorting stations, coded apps to track waste volumes, and taught others how to recycle. The same neighborhoods once buried under bags of plastic now had gardens, compost hubs, and solar-powered community kitchens. What outsiders called garbage, Burkina Faso called opportunity. Narrator slowly rising energy. The world began to whisper, how is this happening? An African country with no major oil reserves, suddenly reducing its fuel imports by 15% using plastic-derived diesel. Capital city once known for air pollution, now reporting a 30% drop in respiratory illness in less than 12 months. Children going to school instead of dumps. Mothers working in recycling tech startups. Fathers running neighborhood biogas systems. Burkina Faso had discovered its own alchemy, not in turning trash into treasure, but in turning pain into power. Narrator cinematic pacing. Traoré didn't build this miracle alone. He unleashed it. He did not act like a king. He acted like a conductor waving in scientists from Kenya who built waste energy plants in slums, inviting Ghanaian innovators who had turned coconut husks into cooking fuel, funding young Burkina engineers who had ideas but no platform. He created what the world never expected. The African Green Innovation Alliance, a coalition of local brains, ground-up solutions, and government backing. No red tape. No World Bank loans. No Western NGOs taking the credit. Just African minds solving African problems. Sound FX, bustling energy lab. Workshop, voices of young engineers brainstorming. Inside a makeshift warehouse on the edge of Bobo Dioulasso, 20 young engineers tested a new plastic melting chamber. The machine hissed, the gauges flickered, and then success. A small vial filled with pure synthetic fuel was held up like a sacred artifact. They cheered. Some cried. One whispered, "This is ours." Narrator emotionally charged. The West watched in silence at first. No one had time for stories from Burkina Faso. Not when headlines were dominated by Wall Street, war, and whispers of AI. But then the numbers began to shake the system. A $12 million increase in Burkina Faso's export income, not from gold, but from eco-fuel. Partnerships with Senegal, Niger, and Togo, who begged Traoré to teach them the same methods, and most shocking of all, a deal with Rwanda that cut their combined waste imports by 80%, rerouting it into shared African production plants. Burkina Faso, a country long dismissed as poor and unstable, had become the epicenter of a green economic uprising. Narrator calm but intense, but not everyone was clapping, because alchemy, when successful, doesn't just change material things. Some revolutions begin with a shout, others with silence, but the quietest revolutions are the ones that last the longest. Because they don't just change systems, they change souls. And in the quiet streets of Burkina Faso, something was rising that no satellite could see. Not oil, not diamonds, not uranium, but something far more powerful. A new way of thinking, a new kind of wealth. The kind that lives beneath your feet, if you're willing to look. Sound FX, distant morning calls, quiet wind, birds, a child laughing. It had been 18 months since President Ibrahim Traoré launched the first waste-to-energy program in Ouagadougou. What started as a desperate attempt to clean up a city had become a model for the world. Across the capital, open dumps had vanished. In their place, solar fields, recycling plants, urban farms. Children no longer walked past burning trash. They walked past murals of trees, innovation hubs, and mothers smiling as they sold clean, affordable gas made from food waste. Narrator soft, astonished tone. And then it happened. A moment that changed everything. The United Nations released a report titled, "The Burkina Faso Model, a New Era for Waste Management and Circular Economies." They called it, the Green Gold Rush. That same month, a team from Al Jazeera visited. Then came BBC Africa. Then National Geographic. Photos of boys harvesting biogas instead of garbage. Videos of schoolgirls explaining how their village runs entirely on recycled energy. The images shocked the world. Not because they were tragic, but because they were beautiful. And they weren't from Europe, not from Silicon Valley, but from a nation once called the poorest on earth. Narrator dramatic shift in tone, then came the corporations. Quietly at first,